A black janitor found a lost baby in the hallway. The camera revealed the truth. Whose baby is this? Marcus Reed froze in the middle of the dim hospital hallway, mop bucket's wheels still squeaking beside him. It was nearly 3 a.m., the hour when even hospitals felt tired, when fluorescent lights hummed louder than human voices and the world outside the windows was just black glass. He'd been pushing his cart past the old East Wing when he heard it, soft at first, then sharper, a broken little sound slicing through the echo of his footsteps. A baby's cry, not from a room, from the hallway. The child lay there alone, right in the middle of the polished linoleum, wrapped in a thin pink blanket that looked too small for the cold air. No stroller, no mother, no nurse, just this tiny brown-haired bundle and a pacifier lying a few inches away, sticky with dust. Marcus looked around, heart hammering. The security camera at the end of the corridor blinked its red light, watching, recording. Hey now, he whispered, kneeling down as his knees cracked the way they always did in winter. He was a big man, dark skin, wide shoulders, old sneakers squeaking on the floor, and he knew how he looked when people first saw him. Intimidating, a black janitor, alone, on the night shift. But the baby didn't know that. The baby only knew the cold and the emptiness and the way its own cries bounced off the walls. He slid his hands under the small body, careful, like the child was made of smoke. The warmth of that tiny chest against his palms hid something deep in him, something buried under years of bleach and bad memories. "It's okay," he murmured, rocking gently. I got you. The crying softened to hiccups. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang. A door slammed. A distant voice shouted something over the intercom he couldn't make out. Marcus looked up at the camera, its unblinking eye shining red. He had no idea that in less than an hour, that same camera would turn him into the villain of the entire hospital. Marcus shifted the baby to his shoulder, one hand splayed wide across the tiny back, the other steadying the head the way he had seen nurses do. The baby smelled like talc and milk and the faint metallic tang of hospital air. His mop leaned against the wall, forgotten, leaving a small puddle that slowly spread, reflecting the overhead lights like a broken mirror. "All right, little man, or little lady," he murmured, squinting at the pink blanket. "We're gonna find your mama." "Yeah." He started walking, shoes whispering over the floor, every step careful, as if the hallway itself might shatter. The baby's fingers curled into the fabric of his blue janitor's shirt, right over the faded name patch. Marcus thought as he moved past the closed doors of the pediatric wing. A memory snagged him like a nail in the dark. Another hallway, another night. A much younger Marcus sitting outside a hospital room he wasn't allowed to enter, hands cuffed in front of him. A police officer leaning against the wall nearby. The sound of a different baby crying, one he'd never gotten to hold, because by the time the judge was done with him, his daughter had a new last name and a new life far from the boy who'd once thought robbing a liquor store was the only way to pay rent. He shook the memory off like dust. That was 20 years ago. This was now. And right now. This child needed someone. Needed him. He bumped the radio on his belt with his elbow. This is Marcus on 3, he said, pressing the button. I found a baby in the East Wing, in the hallway. No parent around. Static answered first, crackling like distant rain. Then the night security guard's voice. Say again. You found a what? A baby? Marcus repeated. Alone. I'm taking them toward the nurse's station. The radio went quiet for a beat too long. Then, copy that. Stay where you are. Don't move. He frowned. Why? Before he could finish, the overhead intercom snapped to life, loud and sharp, making the baby flinch and whimper against his chest. A tense female voice cut through the air. Attention staff. Code pink. Infant missing from the maternity ward. Repeat. Code pink. Marcus looked down at the baby in his arms. Somewhere above him, the camera kept recording. Catching the moment, his world shifted from helper to suspect, even though he didn't know it yet. By the time Marcus reached the intersection near the main nurse's station, the quiet night had exploded. Alarms pulsed in short, stabbing bursts. The usually bored security guard from the front desk was power walking toward him, hand on his radio, eyes sharp now. Two nurses stood behind the counter, faces pale, one of them crying into her hands. A woman in blue scrubs with messy blonde hair kept repeating, "I only looked away for a second," like it was a prayer she hoped would change the last 5 minutes. "There he is," someone shouted. Marcus instinctively tightened his hold on the baby. For a second, every head in the corridor turned toward him. The 6-foot black janitor in a faded polo and cheap sneakers, cradling a baby that shouldn't be in his arms. He felt their fear hit him like a wave he hadn't earned. "Whoa, whoa," he said, raising one hand in surrender while balancing the small body with the other. "I found the baby in the East Hall. I called it in. I'm bringing." "Put the baby down," the security guard barked, hand hovering near his holster even though he wasn't supposed to carry a gun on duty. His other hand pointed up at the camera above Marcus's head as if it were a witness turned against him. "Right now, Marcus." "What?" "No, man, he's scared. Just take him," Marcus said, stepping forward slowly. The baby stirred, giving a weak, confused cry. A woman broke from the cluster behind the desk, a young nurse, maybe mid-20s, with tired eyes and a hospital badge that read Hannah Hale, RN. She stumbled toward Marcus, hands shaking. Is that my baby?" she whispered, voice collapsing at the edges. Marcus held the child out. "If you're his mama, then yeah." The security guard grabbed the baby first, almost yanking him from Marcus's arms to hand him to Hannah. She clutched the child, sobbing, pressing frantic kisses to a tiny forehead. Oh my God, I thought and then she looked up. Her eyes landed on Marcus, wide and glassy and full of terror. But the terror wasn't just from nearly losing her child. It had sharpened into something else. Accusation. "You took him," she breathed. "Oh my God, I saw you near the nursery tonight. You must have." "What?" Marcus stared at her. "No, ma'am, I was waxing floor B. I found him lying." Behind her, a monitor on the wall flickered to a split screen of security feeds. One of the angles showed the east hallway. There, in black and white, was Marcus, bending down, picking up a baby, and walking decisively away. No one else in frame, no abandoned stroller, no shadow slipping away, just him. The security guard's jaw tightened. "We've got you on camera carrying the kid away from the ward, Marcus. Hands behind your back." The slap of cold metal cuffs around his wrists brought back 20-year-old ghosts. As they turned him toward the waiting elevator, he glanced up, just once, at the blinking red light of the corridor camera. "Please," he said under his breath, heart pounding in his ears, "show them what you really saw." The security office was colder than the hallways, lit by the blue glow of 6 aging monitors and one buzzing fluorescent tube that clicked every few seconds like a nervous habit. Marcus sat on a hard plastic chair, hands cuffed in front of him. His mop bucket had been abandoned somewhere upstairs, dirty water cooling in the dark. Across the room, the head of security, a stocky man named Kyle, stood with his arms folded, eyes fixed on the playback of the East Wing footage. The grainy video looped over and over. Empty hall. Nothing. Then Marcus, pushing his cart. Then the baby on the floor. Then Marcus bending down and picking it up. The angle was far, the resolution bad. The time stamp in the corner blinked to 47 a.m. beside Kyle. A detective in a wrinkled gray suit leaned closer to the screen. He'd arrived 10 minutes after the code pink alert. Eyes tired but alert, badge hanging on a chain around his neck. Detective Ramos. He'd introduced himself as, though Marcus doubted anyone cared if he remembered the name of the man who might be about to ruin his life. "You see," Kyle said, jabbing a finger at the screen. "He doesn't even look around, just scoops the kid up and walks off like he owns him." Marcus's throat felt dry. "'Cause I heard him crying," he said. "Anybody would pick up a baby crying in the middle of the damn hallway." Kyle snorted. "Anybody wouldn't have a record for armed robbery." The words landed heavy. The detective's eyes flickered to Marcus, the first real acknowledgement since he'd walked in. "That true?" Ramos asked quietly. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Did my time. Got this job when nobody else would touch me. Been here 8 years. Never even been late. The door opened with a soft hiss. Nurse Gloria stepped in, gray hair pulled into a bun, tired face framed by bifocals. She'd been at the hospital longer than almost anyone, the kind of woman who knew which doctors to avoid and which vending machines never ate your money. "Detective, this is ridiculous," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "I've known Marcus since he started. He reads to patients when no one visits. He buys coffee for our residents. You really think he'd steal a baby?" Ramos held up a hand. "I'm not interested in what I think yet. I'm interested in what I can prove." He turned back to the monitors. "Do we have any footage from before to 47? Kyle sighed and rewound the tape, fingers tapping the keys with practiced impatience. The grainy image shuddered backward. Marcus walking in reverse, backing away, the baby rising from his arms to the floor like something supernatural. Backward, empty hall. The detective narrowed his eyes, then pressed play again, this time letting it roll a full minute earlier than before. For almost 40 seconds, nothing happened. Just the still hallway, the faint flicker of light at the far end, the reflection of nothing in the waxed floor. Then, very faintly, a shape at the edge of the frame. "Wait," Ramos said. "There, stop. Go back a couple seconds and zoom on that left corner." Kyle muttered under his breath but did as told. The camera zoomed in, pixels blooming, turning the image blocky and distorted. But even through the blur, something new emerged. A small hooded figure, moving fast. Too small to be Marcus. Too quick, arms cradling something, or someone. "Who the hell is that?" the detective whispered, for the first time since the cuffs had clicked shut. Marcus felt a tiny, fragile thread of hope pull at his chest so light he barely dared to breathe on it. They moved to the larger monitor on the wall, replaying the moment frame by frame. The hooded figure darted into view from the right, skirting the boundary of the camera's vision, like a shadow trying not to exist. In their arms, a bundled shape. The pixels made it hard to see, but every adult in the room knew what it had to be. The figure slowed by the cleaning cart Marcus had parked there 10 minutes earlier. For a heartbeat, they stood perfectly still, shoulders rising and falling like someone trying not to cry. Then, with quick, jerky movements, they bent down and placed the bundle on the floor near the wall, just at the edge of the camera's blind spot. "Pause," Ramos ordered. The frame froze on a close-up of the hooded person's side profile, half turned toward the lens. It wasn't a man. The features were too soft, the form too slight. The hoodie was pale blue, the same washed-out color as one of the nurse's jackets Marcus had seen earlier. Gloria's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Enhance as much as you can," Ramos said. They tried. The pixels warped, swimming into shapes that almost made sense. A chin, a nose, a flash of long hair tucked under the hood. Most damning of all, the faint glint of a hospital ID badge clipped to the collar. Kyle leaned back, cursing under his breath. "That's one of ours," he said. "Gotta be? But who?" As if summoned by the question, the door opened again. Hannah, the young nurse from the hallway, stepped hesitantly into the room, her baby now resting in a carrier seat she held in the crook of her arm. The child slept, unaware of the storm swirling around him. I was told you needed to speak to me," she asked, voice small. Ramos didn't answer right away. He walked to the screen and quietly pressed play. The room filled with the faint, ghostly motion of the hooded figure again walking in, arms full, bending down, leaving the baby, then fleeing out of frame. A few seconds later, Marcus's cart rolled back into view, with Marcus himself humming some tuneless song as he approached the abandoned bundle. He stopped the video on the hooded figure's profile. Then he turned, slowly, to face Hannah. His eyes moved from her pale blue hoodie, to the hospital badge clipped to her collar, to the way her hands shook just a little as she gripped the baby carrier handle. "Double quotes, Miss Hale," he said gently. "Would you like to tell us why you left your son in that hallway?" The carrier slipped an inch from her hand before she caught it. Her face went white, then blotchy red, like someone had pulled the color out and shoved it back in wrong. That's not," she stammered, eyes locking on the frozen video behind him. Her own shadow on the wall stared back. I didn't. I only. The baby stirred, letting out a tiny, questioning sound, as if even he could feel the tension stacking in the air. Marcus watched Hannah's shoulders hunch inward, watched her eyes fill with the same wild guilt he'd seen in his own reflection the day the police took him away from his daughter. Every part of him wanted to shout, to say, There's your thief. Let me go. But the words tangled with something else. The way her hands trembled, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she held her child like he was both her anchor and the weight dragging her under. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked in half. You don't understand, she whispered. I wasn't trying to abandon him. I was trying to save him. They moved to a smaller conference room, one with a round table and chairs that pretended to be comfortable. The smell of coffee, already stale from the night, mixed faintly with disinfectant. The baby slept in his carrier on the table, a tiny island of peace between storm fronts. Hannah sat across from Ramos, fingers knotted so tightly around each other her knuckles had gone white. Marcus sat off to the side, still cuffed but forgotten for the moment, like a piece of furniture someone had dragged into the room and not yet decided where to put. Gloria hovered near the door, refusing to leave. I'm a single mother, Hannah began, staring at the blank wall behind the detective's head rather than at his face. His father left when I told him I was pregnant. My parents, they said I'd ruin my life. This job is all I've got. If I miss shifts, if I slip up, I lose the health insurance that pays for his formula, his checkups, everything. So, when my sitter bailed tonight, her eyes flickered to her son, guilt pressing heavy on every syllable. I brought him, just for the night, just my shift. I thought I could keep him in an empty on-call room, check on him every hour. I know it was against the rules, but what was I supposed to do? Ramos listened, expression unreadable, and the whole way. He prompted softly. She swallowed. He started crying. Loud. I panicked. I was already behind on meds. Charge nurse kept breathing down my neck. I thought someone would hear and report me. I picked him up and ran out into the corridor, trying to calm him. That's when I saw. She glanced at Marcus for the first time. I saw him, she said, pushing his cart, humming. He was talking to one of the patients earlier, making her laugh. I thought. I don't know what I thought. That he was kind. That he noticed things. That if I left my baby where he was, he'd find him fast. Take him somewhere safe. Maybe someone would call CPS, and they'd give my son to a family who wasn't drowning. Tears spilled over now, soaking into the sleeves of her hoodie. But the second I walked away, I wanted to turn back. I freaked out. I ran to the nurse's station. When I heard Code Pink, I knew what I'd done. But when I saw him holding my baby, all I could think was, if I tell the truth, I'll lose him forever. So I lied. Silence settled thick over the table. Only the baby's soft breathing dared to move through it. Marcus shifted in his chair, cuffs clinking. You picked me, he said quietly. Hannah looked at him, eyes swollen, confused. You saw the black janitor and thought, he'll be the one they blame, he continued. No anger in his voice, just weary understanding. And you weren't wrong. Soon as they saw that tape, nobody wanted to hear nothing else. Hannah flinched like he'd slapped her, then shook her head, tears coming harder. I didn't mean, I just saw someone who looked like he cared. He studied her for a moment, then looked down at his own hands, the deep lines and faded scars, the faint tremor that always came when old memories got too close. You ever done something so stupid, so desperate, that you spend the rest of your life wishing you could take that 1 minute back? He asked, not really expecting an answer. He got one anyway. Hannah let out a small, broken laugh. Every day, she said. For the first time, the room didn't feel split into sides, accuser and accused, nurse and janitor, white and black. It felt like two people sitting on opposite ends of the same bad decision, both terrified of what it would cost them. Ramos sat back, exhaling slowly. Well, he said, glancing from the frozen security footage still visible through the open office door to the sleeping child on the table. The camera doesn't just show who picked the baby up, it shows who put him down. And with that, The lines everyone thought were carved in stone began to blur. An hour later, the metal cuffs clicked open. The relief didn't rush in all at once. It seeped, slow and cautious, like the way light creeps under a closed door. Marcus rubbed his wrists, feeling the ghost of the pressure still there. He could have stood up and walked straight out of the room, out of the hospital, out of the mess. But his legs didn't move. His eyes were stuck on the baby, now awake and blinking at the world like it was all brand new again. Hospital administration had shown up. All stiff suits and carefully measured words: liability, policy, internal review. They spoke in a language meant to protect the building more than the people in it. Behind them, Kyle kept pacing, still rattled by the thought that his cameras had almost helped frame an innocent man. So, one of the administrators said, adjusting his tie, given the circumstances, we're prepared to keep this quiet. No formal charges, no media. Miss Hale will be placed on immediate suspension pending review. And Mr. Reed. Marcus looked up. We'd like to. Mutually separate, the man continued. In light of the incident and your prior record, it might be best for everyone if that's not happening. Detective Ramos cut in, voice calm but firm. The only reason that child is safe is because Mr. Reed picked him up. The footage makes that clear, and so does Ms. Hawley's statement. Hannah winced at the mention of her name, but nodded, clutching her son tighter. She'd confessed fully now, to bringing the baby, to leaving him, to panicking. Her job hung by a thread. Her custody might, too. She looked like someone standing on a cliff, wind at her back. Nothing but empty space below. Gloria stepped forward, spine straighter than anyone else's in the room. You all love those posters in the lobby about heroes in scrubs and hospital family, she said. Well, your cameras just caught one of your family doing something terrible out of fear, and another doing something kind with nobody watching. Who you going to treat like the criminal? The room went quiet. Marcus cleared his throat. Everyone turned to him. His voice felt rusty, like he hadn't used it in years for anything that mattered. Look, he said softly, I ain't here to tell you what to do with Miss Hale. That's your rules, your world. But I know what it's like to have one mistake follow you for decades. To have people look at your skin and your record and decide they already know the story. He looked at Hannah, whose eyes shone with fresh tears. You messed up. Bad. But you didn't leave that baby in a dumpster. You brought him to the one place you knew could keep him alive. And when I picked him up, he grabbed onto me like I was supposed to be there. Maybe that's worth something. Ramos watched him, something like respect flickering across his face. I'm not saying forget it, Marcus finished, but don't pretend she's a monster and I'm some shadow. You gotta sweep out the back door so nobody asks questions. The camera showed the truth, all of it. Maybe y'all should look at the whole picture before you decide who gets to stay. The administrator shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Ramos, then at Gloria, then at Kyle, who couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. Finally, he sighed. We'll take this under serious consideration, he said, which in administration language was as close to an apology as Marcus expected to get. As the others filtered out to draft statements and schedule meetings, Hannah approached Marcus, baby on her hip, up close. She seemed even younger. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I almost ruined your life to save mine. He studied her for a long second, then shook his head slowly. You were drowning, he said. You grabbed the wrong thing to hold on to, is all. He looked at the baby, who stared back with solemn, curious eyes. Make sure he knows you kept trying. Okay, even when you got it wrong. Her lip trembled. Why are you being kind to me? He thought of a tiny girl with his brown eyes and someone else's last name, a girl he hadn't seen since before she could walk. Because I know what it costs when nobody is, he said, out in the corridor. The camera over the conference room door blinked quietly, capturing every second of a kind of forgiveness no policy manual had ever written down. A week later, the hallway looked the same. Same hum of lights, same scuffed baseboards, same faint smell of bleach and night. But something in it had shifted, like a picture frame nudged just enough to change what it reflected. Marcus pushed his mop bucket past the east wing again, familiar squeak echoing off the walls. The hospital's internal review had ended with more emails than actions, as usual. But some things had changed. There was a new policy about staff childcare support, an extra security camera added near the blind spot where the baby had been left. Mandatory bias training scheduled, although Marcus suspected half the people would scroll their phones through it. What mattered to him was simpler. He still had his job, his keys, his name patch over his heart. He still had this hallway, these floors, this quiet kingdom of the in-between hours where most people only pass through, and he stayed. He paused where he'd first found the baby. For a moment, the memory overlapped the present, the empty floor, and layered over it like a ghost. A small pink bundle and his own shaking hands reaching down. Soft footsteps approached from behind. "Hey, Marcus," he turned. Hannah stood there, off-duty clothes and a diaper bag slung across her shoulder. Her son rested against her chest in a wrap, cheeks chubby now, eyes more awake. She'd been formally reprimanded, put on a strict probation, given a list of conditions longer than a CVS receipt. She'd also been given something else, a second chance. "You shouldn't be lugging him around this late," Marcus said with a half smile. "Daycare trial run," she replied. "They're starting a 24-hour pilot program for overnight staff. Figured we'd be the guinea pigs." She shifted her weight. I asked if I could choose who watches him in the trial hours, and he asked, and I told them the only person I trust in this building at 3 a.m. is the guy who picked him up when everyone else was asleep," she said. "They approved it. If you want it, extra pay. Official title is night care assistant." Marcus blinked, feeling something loosen deep in his chest. "You sure about that?" he asked, voice rough. She nodded. "He already likes you," she said, looking down at her son, who reached a tiny hand toward Marcus as if on cue. "And I want him to grow up seeing men like you as safe, not scary." He stepped closer, letting the baby's fingers curl around one of his own, the contrast between their skin tones stark and beautiful. For a second, the hum of the lights faded, the world narrowing to the warmth of that tiny grip and the quiet steadying of his own heartbeat. Above them, the security camera watched, red light blinking. It saw a black janitor in a faded blue shirt and a young white nurse with gilt lines still faint, but fading. It saw a baby reaching out, unafraid. It saw a man who'd once been known only by his mugshot, now known, at least in this one corner of the world, as the guy who stayed when others ran. If someone played the footage back later, frame by frame, there'd be no twist this time, no hidden figure at the edge of the shot, no accusation, just a hallway, a mop bucket, a tired woman, a curious child, and a man gently making faces until the baby laughed. "All right, little man," Marcus murmured, a soft smile tugging at his mouth. "Looks like we're gonna be spending some nights together." The baby gurgled, as if answering. As Hannah walked away to sign a few more forms, Marcus stood alone for a moment, letting the quiet settle around him. The hallway didn't feel like the scene of a crime anymore. It felt like the opening shot of a different kind of story. He picked up his mop handle with one hand, keeping his other open, ready for the next small hand that might need it. The floor shone under the lights, reflecting him not as a suspect, not as a mistake, but as a man who had been seen, truly seen by a lens that, for once, had shown more than judgment. Sometimes, the camera revealed the worst in people. This time, it had done something else. It had caught a moment of failure? Yes, but also a choice to turn that failure into something softer, something braver, and if there was a moral to all of it, Marcus thought as he started down the hallway, it was this: you can't always choose who's watching you, but you can choose who you become in the frame.